Welcome to another episode of Black Polyandry TV. And today we're going to be discussing where are the men who are interested in polyandry. And we're going to be focusing more so on the argument of gender ratio in the United States. And, I wanted to talk about this because it's brought up all the time. So I know you guys remember this post where I basically tried to give you guys an answer about where men in general who are interested in polyandry. And, I went through and showed you some states in which where, examples of where men are. And in the comments, which I have 200 comments of, people still asking, well, besides those states, obviously the states that you see, that's not obviously all 52 states. Of course, I can only put 10 pictures in a post. But people are asking, well, what about my state? What about this state? What about these particular states? So we're just going to start there. So let's begin. I want to first start with the gender ratio because I know you have seen on the internet and social media where the topic of gender ratio comes up, and it's always men trying to invalidate the practice of polyandry by bringing up the ratio of how many women there are to men. And they always come up with these crazy ratios. And honestly, the ratios never are consistent. It's always 4-1, 2-1, 10-1, 8-1. And it continues. Every time someone says a crazy ratio, I tend to look it up to see if there is more women than men in the world. And in the world, no, there is not. Let's check. In the world, honestly, there are more men than women in the world. But if we're just going to focus on the United States, let's focus on the United States. And in the United States, there are more men, there are more women than men in the United States. But let's explore this. This is not just something we have to take in and just take that and be like, well, okay, well, that's it. Well, that's it. That's our answer. We should just practice polygyny. No, that's not how we do our research and make a logical decision, right? So let's focus on regionally. Where are these abundance of women? Where are they? So in this graph here, what you are seeing is the male to female ratio by state in 2021. So it states here right on the right that the highest ratio of men to women is in Alaska, and the lowest ratio of men to women is in Alabama. So the colors basically are indicating that in accordance to state, the darker blue colors is where there are more men than women in that state, in comparison to the lightest blue colors, where that is where there are more women than men in those states. So a lot of you guys, when you are looking locally to date locally, let's think about the practicality of dating locally, not just finding mentality, but just in general, how many men are in your state. This is the answer to that question. Okay, so as you can see, on the east side in general, there are more women residing in the east side of the United States than there are on the west side. Okay, so that's something to just keep in mind, when you are practicing polyandry. If you want to expand your options, you might want to travel, right? Let's do that. So here it says, in the United States in general, it lists the states here. The states with the lowest male to female ratios are District of Columbia, Delaware, Mississippi, Alabama, Maryland, Massachusetts, South Carolina, New York, North Carolina, and Georgia. Basically where most of us reside. Where most of us reside, okay? So here they list the 10 states where it is the highest sex ratio of men to women. So Alaska, North Dakota, Wyoming, South Dakota, Colorado, Hawaii, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, and Utah. Okay. So these is just something that you can think about. Okay, and then they listed, of course, by state. So this is something I just wanted to show you. And now what we're going to do is, after we've spoken about the area in which you can find an abundance of men, now what we're going to do is explore the age range. Okay, because we need to figure out why is there more men, or where the more men are, right? So we're going to go here. So, and I'm doing it this way to show you how we have this discussion and how we're going to utilize some research in our discussion, instead of just utilizing blanket statistics or just speaking from our own personal bias of whatever message we want to get across, but not really utilize any particular facts behind what we're doing. Okay. So what we have here, it says gender ratio in the world in 2021 is 101.68 males per 100 females. Okay. So this is just globally. So understand that there's more men in the world globally, and it's different and it varies depending on which country. So when we're looking at different countries, it will differ. There are I looked it up. I saw 2 videos where they talk about the top 10 countries that has the highest female sex rates in that country, and the US was not one of them. So honestly, in the US, the ratio is so close to being even. So the imbalance is only slight. Okay. So they talk about the sex ratio at birth is 107 boys per 100 girls. So what we're looking at here is graphs. Okay. This is something I want to point out. It says, as of 2020, U.S. has more males than females aged below 39 years and 50 to 54 year group. Men to women ratio in the U.S. shifts dramatically for older populations above 60 years. And that's something we're going to discuss. So what I'm showing you here is a bar graph, and just by the colors alone, on the left here you see the ages, and on the bottom you see the numbers. So here we're looking at the U.S. gender ratio by age group. Okay, so the red indicates where there is more men in comparison to the green, where it indicates the that there's more women than men. Okay, so notice as the ages are younger, there are more men than there are women, and it just declines as we age. Okay, so the same thing right here with this chart. So we're just going to look at the numbers. Okay, so you see in the left here is the age group, then you have male, female, and then you have the male per 100 female at the end. Okay, so I just want us to look at this. And at birth, there is 10.1 million boys being born in comparison to 9.6 million girls being born. Okay. And once we get to people that are over 100, it's 22,000 in comparison to 81,000. So it's a dramatic change in who is outliving who. And it's congruent, across many countries that women outlive men. So that's kind of, a normal thing that happens, that women are outliving men. But we need to look at the solutions to that particular problem. Okay? When we start thinking about the practicality between practicing either polygyny or polyandry. Okay? So we're going to look at um, if you're practicing polyandry and you really want to know, you know, where to go, what to do, we already established that you need to check out your state and see if your state has an abundance of men. That's number one. And then check to see where you can, expand your search and maybe different states and states in which has more men than women. That's number one. The next thing is now we're focusing on age group. So they mentioned that between the ages of, honestly, between the ages of 20 and 39, that's where men outnumber women. Men still outnumber women in today's age. Between 20 and 39. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 4 columns where there is 103 males to 100 females. Okay? So I think that's, that says a lot about, the mortality rate of our men. With polyandry having the benefit of the men having a brother there to assist him in life so he's not pressured, and if anything was to happen to him, he would have someone there to help him in any particular situation, and also take care of his family if he was to experience an early demise. Okay, so if we're talking about our men, we kind of need to focus on our men living longer and focusing on how they can achieve that instead of focusing on, trying to have multiple women commit to them and not even guaranteeing them long life, because they're all going to outlive you, most likely. If you have a bunch of wives, they're going to outlive you, and you're going to have wives and children left without you at all. So we need to start thinking about the practicality of why we should practice what we should practice. And also, numerically, it may seem like it makes sense that older men should be polygynous, as since there is more women as they grow older. But once we start, considering different aspects, like how women hit their sexual peaks as they get older, whereas men start declining as they get older, it kind of doesn't make sense. So we need to, factor in a lot of other different elements as to what we should practice. But right now, I'm just going to focus on the numerical value and seeing what makes mathematical sense. And right now, it's honestly arguable whether there's actually way more women than men, and it really just depends on your age group and your region, where you are. You can always change where you are. You can always travel to get what it is that you're looking for, and it also depends on preference in your dating, on your age group, your preferred age group. So it really boils down to choice, and it really doesn't matter. So when you bring up there's more of one gender to another, honestly, with this country, it's more even than you may think, in comparison to countries that really do have an overabundance of women than men, to the point where the society and country itself would have to embark on a marital practice that would even out the population. But the United States in itself is really not that much. The ratio between men and women is 50 to 49. Honestly, it's not that big of a deal. So I'm hoping that this video helps both the men and women, the women who are just wondering how I can go about my polyandrous journey, what are the steps I should take, where are the men at. Hopefully this helps you understand, you know, where men in general are. And I'm hoping that this also helps the men in general who are try to utilize gender ratio as a way to invalidate polyandry, to help them understand that that is more of a invalid point to make, especially being that we are focused on the Black community in general and not the entire United States. And also we are not factoring in, you know, the ages of the gender, the statistics that we're talking about. So with those statistics that you guys are trying to come up with, you know, the whole 8-to-1 or whatever you're trying to say, there's more women than men, you're not factoring in babies, children, adolescents, anyone under 18. You're not talking about anyone over 80 who may not be dating anymore or may already be married, or people who, in general, people who do not even want to practice any form of poly at all, and people are still monogamous. So there's so many factors in general that invalidate that statement, and not even getting into sexuality and how people in general are not just heterosexual. There are other sexualities that people identify with. And again, so there really isn't an imbalance as much as you men are making it seem. Honestly, at this point, it's really just about personal preference. And, you know, yeah, so basically we're all free to pretty much choose what we can do, because there's so many different factors that play into, you know, who's available for what particular dynamic. There's really no way to determine how many people are available for a specific dynamic, so we can stop trying. Okay, but thanks so much for watching. Thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.